Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everyone. Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. On this show, I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Today's show, it's sponsored by Barrels Ahead. Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, we help wineries and craft beverage producers unlock their story to unleash their revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Bianca Harmon, our D2C strategist, is joining us today. How's it going, Bianca?
It's going great, Drew. Looking forward to talking to Jeff today.
Yes, I am super excited to talk with Jeff Herbert. Jeff is the founder of Superstition Meadery in Prescott, Arizona. They recently opened up a new wine and food pairing facility in Phoenix, and I'm excited to hear all about it. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on. So, Jeff, we got to just jump in. Why mead?
So, mead is the most delicious thing that most people have never tried.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. I've had a fair amount of mead in my day, but it's a product category in the alcohol category. Let's take us back to when you started Superstition Meadery. Why? Talk to us about that.
Sounds good. So my undergraduate degree was in anthropology. So I've always been interested in history, religion, mythology, and trying to understand a lot of things about the world. And so I think the best way to kind of understand the world is to travel and meet people and to get some different perspectives and challenge the things that you've always be, the way things are or true or whatnot. Because chances are you're probably only half right at best, right? So I've always really loved traveling and learning about other cultures and at least attempting to speak other languages and whatnot. So I was taking a trip a long time ago to Borneo. And I was in this hostel where everyone that was a traveler kind of hung out in this town called Miri that was going to either dive in that area or to head into the jungle. And there was a bar down below this hotel hostel where you'd hang out. And so I was down there with some other travelers and I started talking to some folks and it turned out this one guy was a wildlife biologist and grew up 10 minutes away from where I was living at the time in the Phoenix area. And so we, stayed in touch and became friends. And my buddy Mark would come visit for when he'd see his folks for the holidays and stuff. And one time he brought some homebrew beer over and I couldn't stop talking about it. And so about 6 months later, it was Father's Day. I got home from the fire station. So I retired from Phoenix Fire with 20 years in the fire service. And I got home from the, thanks. Yeah, I got home from the fire station. My wife had a Father's Day present that was a homebrew kit, a refrigerator, and shelving unit. And I just got totally into homebrew. And it was kind of good timing because I had my sons were really young at the time. My wife was getting into this endurance horse racing that she's excelled at. And so a lot of times I'd hang out with the kids, and we'd spend, 6 hours on a brew day. We'd just be out in the front yard. And we were in a part of town that ironically people probably just thought we were cooking meth on the game. Because you've got like a turkey burner and tubes and all this stuff. And I was like, no, we're just making beer. But no one actually ever asked that. But I'm sure people drove by and thought, look at those guys. They're just doing it in the front yard, not even in the trailer. So anyways, I just got way into that. And, my wife would help out and the kids would help out. And of course, your friends come over and encourage you when you're a home brewer because they get to drink all your beer for free.
Sure.
When you homebrew a lot, typically you're making 5 gallons of beer, wine, mead, cider, whatever at a time. And eventually, I was doing 10-gallon batches that were all grain. But anyways, I was going through the whole beer thing and learning about, some of the science and the art behind brewing. And I started making mead the first week that I started making beer. And my first meads turned out to be much better than my first beers. And I eventually learned how to make beer okay, I think. And I love doing collaborations with our brewery friends. And, oftentimes we'll make, a beer with a little honey in it to represent what we're all about. But anyways, that's kind of how I started just getting interested in this. And I always liked craft beer. I was the kind of person that would, generally have a Newcastle, which we would just say an import or a microbrew back in the day, right? Versus craft beer, double IPA or whatever. No one even knew what that was almost 10 years ago even. So, things have changed a lot in exciting ways in the craft beer world. And I keep referring to craft beer because that's really where the customer base for mead comes into play. So we can talk about the business setup, like sort of through regulations and the legalities about what we do, because everyone that makes mead in America is a winery.
Yes.
But most of our customers come from the craft beer world, because I think that the most open-minded drinkers and crossover drinkers is a term that we use. They're craft beer fans because they want to try the next new thing, the next IPA with the next hop. Anyway. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's very insightful, though. It is. And a few people realize, like, they associate mead with the kind of beer and craft beer movement, but you're technically a winery, and there's a pretty solid line between what a winery can do and what a brewery can do.
And that line, with one exception, I'm not well versed in when it comes to seltzers. The line starts and stops with cereal grains.
Yes.
So a brewery is going to use a cereal grain, which, if you're unfamiliar, like, we all know what cereal is, right? But like rice, corn, wheat, malted barley, rye. I mean, those are cereal grains that you can use to make beer and are used commonly. We're technically not allowed to have a packet of oatmeal in our winery, which is kind of funny.
It's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing. So you can make cider, you can make fruit wines, you can really do anything a winery can do. Because you are a winery. You are a winery. And we do all those things, or have done all those things for sure. So back when you were at the homebrew, your initial success was in mead. So is that what caused you to go down that road, or did you see an untapped product category?
So both, right? Every home brewer, home mead maker, home cider maker, I think at least dreams a little about what would it look like if I had a brewery, meadery, winery one day. And you come up with some guys and gals will name their write on their bottle caps the name of the beer and make labels even. And so I started thinking about all of this stuff and taking notes. And of course, along this path of learning how to make beer and make mead at home, I continued traveling and going to craft breweries and talking to brewers and business owners. And then, like many firemen, I was asking myself the question for years, what could I do for a side gig? Like, you can always, especially these days, work overtime, right? And make a little extra money. And a lot of firemen at the time that I was looking into doing this as a business were getting into real estate before the last recession, and doing construction and stuff. And I'm interested in those things. I love the process of a project and managing it. And that's ultimately what business is, right? You're establishing a project, you're managing it, you're building a system that's going to make something, right? And so I love that process. And so I also thought that, having your own business is that, maybe one day way of, achieving other dreams, right? So there's that whole American dream tied into that. And so mead is definitely something that is to this day still, very young, very unfamiliar to people. Our two biggest challenges are that no one knows what mead is, and it's really expensive to make it. So trying to get a customer to become a mead fan, it really just requires them trying really good mead and then finding what they like for their style. But
the other challenge is a lot of us who have had mead have had it like at a Renaissance fair, and it was really not a memorable experience.
That was my first time. I drank Chaucer's at the Arizona Renaissance Fair, and it's like the most trite thing you can say and how you got introduced to me. But it's true. It's true for me. It's true for a lot of people. I think it's less true these days now that there's about 600 meaderies in the country, and in every state you can find a mead producer, which is really cool. But when I started, there were 3 or 4 commercial examples of mead that I could get in Arizona. There was no meadery, no one making mead. And so I did, to answer your question, absolutely. I saw that and considered, hey, there's a lot of room here. And when it comes to taking risk in business, the greatest risk maybe comes the greatest reward. It all depends on a lot of factors, right? But I thought that would be kind of cool. But I was planning on this, and working towards taking notes and traveling and interviewing people, like having a brewery. And my wife and I decided that we were going to sell our home and move to Prescott, in this small, cool mountain town where I'm talking to you from right now, where we established our company to raise our kids.
You've retired from the fire department at this point, right?
No. I only retired like 2.5 years ago. So I work no one would believe the hours. So the fire department gig is 56 hours a week. And my schedule was we had an ABC shift. So I would work for 24 hours on and I would have 48 hours off. So I worked one out every 3 days. And so that schedule, though, allowed me to live, outside of town and commute 100 miles door to door. So I was commuting 10 hours a week on average, working 56 hours a week at the fire department, and then starting a business, which no one will believe those hours. So yeah, it was insane.
Talk about boots on the ground work.
What's that?
I said, talk about boots on the ground.
Yeah, totally. And, a lot of firemen, the guys that do, construction, for example, I had friends, they, basically work all night when you're up and then go pour concrete for 8 hours. Like the amount of stamina and like trying to balance out your work life, your family life, your mental health, your physical, all that. Yeah, it's a challenge, but you know what? That's that's kind of like an analogy on how do you get ahead, right? The American dream isn't something that you just are handed. It's something you have to decide to go and make a reality. And it requires, I think, working just ridiculous hours, super hard, making good choices, and all of those things that are common denominators to being successful. So I realized that early on and applied those lessons. But we moved to Prescott and we went to the closest winery within 4 weeks of being here. And I brought some homebrew mead with me to the winery, and we got to know the couple that owned and ran this winery called Juniper Well Ranch. And before we left, they said, "Hey, you guys should make your mead here." And I said, "That's funny because I was just about to start looking for a very small space in town to go through the motions." And at that point, I had figured out a lot of the basics of what you had to do to legally establish a business, a winery, the bank accounts, and then there's all the creative side, right? The social media and stuff. Sure. So I had something in mind, and a lot of that something was really defined because I took a class at the Siebel Institute in Chicago, which was called How to Start a Brewery. And if you don't know, or your listeners don't know, Siebel and a couple other universities now around the U.S. are the best places to become a master brewer. And so that program is months long. You go to Germany and England and stuff, but they have this 3-day class that was taught by each section. It's every 2 hours, over 3 days was taught by the leading experts in their field of whether it was graphic design for beer labels, or they had a TTB, a federal agent come in and talk about the legality and compliance stuff to us. They had these guys that had established, like Ray Daniels, the Cicerone program, the best brewery engineer in the world. And so the first question they asked at Siebel was, there were 40 people in the class, and they said, "Raise your hand if you're an award-winning home brewer." And everyone but me raised their hand because I've been doing this for a couple of years, but I'm like, I didn't have friends that did it. It was just me and the internet and books and magazines. And I looked at the guy next to me and I said, "They have awards for this shit?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, that's how you get feedback from judges and everything." And so as soon as I got home, I had learned how to write a business plan to start a brewery from people that had just done it, how to either self-fund or get financed, like all of this stuff that it just makes sense now in hindsight, but at the time was brand new information to me. And so I wrote a business plan. I started entering competitions with my already made beers and meads and ciders, and I was winning medals right away. So I'm like, cool, I'm on to something, at least from beer judges, right? They're saying this is good beyond my friends getting drunk for free in my kitchen. So that all was inspirational, right? It was a lot of inspiration in the beginning. And we set up the first alternating proprietorship in the state of Arizona. And that's where one separate licensed winery or brewery or distillery rents space from another. So there's the host and the guest, or the tenant.
Like a sublet type thing.
Exactly. So our first winery was legally 20 square feet. It was enough room for 4 barrels stacked too high. That was it. And we could share the bottling line and equipment. It was a bottling line. It was a gravity filler with 6 heads. So, but we were able to share equipment with the winery, and we ran that program for a couple of years before it was time to move on and open up our. I'm pointing because I'm looking at our production facility building for my office. So we opened a production facility in air quotes, right? I mean, it was 400 square feet at that point. And a tasting room in Prescott. It's still there. We don't make mead there anymore. Now our old production space is, sitting in some merch space. But we have this awesome tasting room that my wife and I we couldn't afford to pay contractors beyond pulling the tenant permit and doing some finishing work. We spent about a year doing the work ourselves. I've got video of my wife running a jackhammer. We're wallpapering, painting, welding, all this stuff, built a tasting room, production facility. And I thought, hey, it's going to take me 3 or 4 years of growing this business with all of the, my wife was still working as well with her full-time gig, and I had the fire thing I already talked about. So I was like, hey, in a few years, maybe we'll be at a point where we can just, grow, right? 3 to 4 months later, we had barrels in the office, barrels under the stairs. We had 34 wine barrels full of product. We made 6,800 gallons of mead and cider besides the barrels in the office and stuff, in 400 square feet in 2016. We saved up enough money to get an SBA loan. We, from scratch, designed and bought commercial land that was vacant, our current production facility. We opened that in 2017. 2020, we opened our restaurant in Phoenix, the world's first meat and food pairing restaurant called Superstition downtown. And this week or next week, we're getting keys for a new warehouse right across the street, just for storage, not for production of equipment, and some empty and full bottles, cans, and kegs. So that's kind of a wrap up of the growth.
That is quite an operation to get from just your first homebrew, your first getting your first awards, to the scale that you've grown this meadery. Now, the question is, how do you find adoption, and how do you find such great, you're placed in Total Wine, you're Costco, you've got an incredible distribution thing set up, but that requires people to really embrace the brand and the product. How did you go about building that?
That's a really good question. So I think that, almost anyone that's really into homebrewing, for example, can become an extreme homebrewer, as we were when we went commercial, right? You can learn how to make great beer, mead, wine, cider with the resources available today, the classes that are out there. I think that figuring out how to make things that taste really good, technically, as long as you know what good is, which is kind of a dumbed down way of saying, like, you just have to know what good is, right? Like, if you go to a restaurant, you have to be able to, I think, articulate and, what are you tasting, and why is something that's complex and it's changing across your palate, why is it good, right? You got to know that. And then you have to learn how to make that. And then you have to do something original. And then you have to figure out how to sell it. I think that's the hard part, right? I mean, think how many breweries, wineries, meaderies even out there are making awesome products, but, are having trouble scaling. We're always having trouble scaling to the next level. It's always, it's an ephemeral challenge. It's because you're going to have your wins, right? But anyways.
And if you look at your product offering, it's really akin to almost what you'd see at a brewery versus a winery, with, like, I'm looking at this Belgian dark strong mead, and that there's you can definitely see the affinity and why that would appeal to a beer drinker. How do you walk us through the different types and styles of mead? Because I think even the people in the industry, we don't know as much as we think we know.
Or even just maybe, like a little bit of the big differences between wine and mead, and beer and mead. And
that sounds great. If you allow me 1 minute, I just want to wrap up that last answer, because it's really important to say at this point that you cannot grow, scale, or sell products without great people, because you can't do it all yourself. And I have some amazing, amazing staff that really embrace the brand, that know about it and know about mead, that are true subject matter experts. And those are the men and women that work for Superstition, that are out there every day doing events, working with our distributors, and changing people's minds. So that's maybe like a good way to sum up, how do we make those sales happen? There's a lot of, we could talk about Mead 101 and our sell sheets and our design and all this stuff too, but really it comes down to people and training programs that I've taken from the fire service and applied to our staff. Anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But let's talk about mead and styles and beer, right? So we already mentioned that a brewery is going to use cereal grains to make their products. A winery is going to use sugar. It's going to use sugar that comes from grapes in wine as we know it, right? White wine, red wine. It's going to use sugar from apples in cider. It's going to use sugar from honey, from mead. And a distillery can do any of those things in any combination, but they have to distill it. Yeah. So it is possible to stack licenses and be a brewery and a distillery and a winery, depending on your state, but federally that's cool. So it's important to understand that in America, the federal government divides and conquers in taxes, right? The alcohol producers by those 3 categories. There are no other categories. A lot of what we do, like you just mentioned, Belgian dark strong mead, it's kind of a gray area, right? Technically that's a wine, but it took inspiration from beer. My favorite beers to make as a home brewer and to drink today, I've got what's often considered the best beer in the world, Westvleteren 12. It's a Belgian dark strong ale. I love brewing those. So that's a Belgian Trappist ale. And And as a home brewer, you're trying to save money, right? So, I mean, you can't even buy this in America, but if you were to buy its counterpart, it'd be like a Rochefort 10, right? And that would be a $6 11.2 ounce bottle of beer. That's kind of spendy, right? So I could make that not as good as the Monks, but I could make like something kind of close for about $1.50 a bottle as a home brewer. And so I love talking about Belgian dark strong ales. That's as a beer judge, I became a beer judge, BJCP judge. So our homebrew club here in Prescott could get the guys and gals names like in the Zimmergy magazine and stuff. And so we would abbreviate that BDSA. So I thought it was kind of fun to say, hey, Belgian dark strong mead, BDSM, and we have a little tongue-in-cheek fun with our names and advertising when it comes to all of that. And so mead takes cues from the beer world and the wine world. We can also age as a winery. You can age a Cabernet, a cider, a mead in any kind of barrel, even a spirit barrel. The barrel has to be dry officially, but you can have flavor imparted from cherry brandy, peach brandy, sherry barrels, rum barrels, bourbon barrels. And we've used all of those things. I'm drinking a rye whiskey barrel aged mead right now. That's a prickly pear mead. And this hasn't come out. It's coming out in a couple of weeks. So that we don't even have a label. We wrote rye on the bottom. So we can use any barrel that we want, but mead is defined by the fact that honey is providing the primary fermentable sugar or ingredient into the product. So a traditional mead would be made from honey, water, and yeast. And what we do to make that is we reverse the process that the bees went through to make honey. So now we're going to talk about the birds and the bees. So if you don't know about beekeeping, we've learned a little bit along the way by like interacting with cool small local beekeepers and by trying to raise bees ourselves. I have books behind me on beekeeping. I haven't read one yet, and that's why the bees keep flying away. But one day when I have more time, we're going to have an apiary.
That would be fantastic.
It's not a lot of extra time to read these days or ever in starting a business. So anyways, a traditional mead is honey, water, and yeast. And to make that fermentation happen, we're reversing this process. So the bees are going to leave the hive. They communicate through dancing and pheromones. It's amazing what you learn about bees. And they're going to go out to a flower and they're going to drink the nectar. And on their way back to that beehive, there are enzymes in a honey sac. So bees have this it's kind of like an extra stomach, but it's before their stomach, where the nectar starts to change into what will become honey. They get back to the hive. They regurgitate from this honey sac this nectar into the hive. Eventually, they're going to seal it up. But first, they have to dry it out. And the bees know they have to get the moisture content below 18% in order for that to be stable. So when we talk about stability in winemaking or brewing or cider making, it means it won't ferment. And there's a lot of ways to make something stable. The bees know they have to make that a hyperosmotic solution. It's so thick, right? We all know how thick honey is, that honey's fine. It won't ferment. You can have all the wild yeast and bacteria in the world, and it's all around us right now. It's invisible, right? You need a microscope to see it. But those things can work on that nectar if it wasn't, below 18% moisture content, and the bees will be making mead. And there's, anecdotal evidence in nature where there's a beehive in a tree, and the tree branch breaks and the bees leave, and the hive's kind of messed up, and rainwater floods it, and mead can spontaneously ferment in nature. So I haven't seen that myself, but I've read some stories.
So we've seen the YouTube videos of the drunken bears.
Yeah, absolutely. So a bear smashes up a beehive. He's looking for grubs, right? They don't care. Honey's just makes the grubs go down, right? So they want protein from the grubs. They smash it up. The bees leave. Bear gets stung. Rainwater gets in, and then who knows? Yeah, the bears could be, making mead. Not the same way we make it, but good on those guys. So we're gonna reverse that process by adding water back in. So if we do that, that's a traditional mead. But instead of water, or in addition to water, we can add any legal fruit, herb, or spice to that fermentation. We can add those ingredients at the end of fermentation to retain a little extra character. We can add them after. We can add them in the barrel, after the barrel. We've made over 400 products in 10 years, and so it would be almost impossible.
Yeah, you have an incredible sell sheets on the amount of products that you've tried. It is impressive.
And are you using like this blueberry one really sticks out to me? So are you using blueberries? Are you using are you getting fruit for all of these?
It depends on the recipe. So we use different types of fruit juice, fruit purees, whole fruit, frozen fruit. I'm going to finish this glass, and I was just thinking we would, since you asked how we do it, we froze peaches with liquid nitrogen to make this mead. And so when you freeze fruit, you break down the cell walls, and it allows you to extract more flavor and color from the fruit. So there are all different processes and preparations of fruit and different ingredients that we use. We've used whole vanilla beans, vanilla bean paste. We've tried vanilla extract. There's all different ways to get vanilla into a product. Mm-hmm. So I feel like part of the superstition style and the way it's evolved is I've never eschewed any like production methods or processes or different types of ingredients. We want to use what we can source and find that makes the best end result. And that means we have a wine press. That means we've used liquid nitrogen. It means all of these crazy things. It's also a lot of fun. And, there's a, graphic design and marketing aspect to using liquid nitrogen.
I love your designs. So before we talk about some of your most successful meads, all that experimentation, there has to be some that just, no, I'm not going to do that again.
So we've only had to actually dump a couple of batches in 10 years, which is amazing. One really big one where we had an equipment failure with a glycol machine. That was sad. But as far as things not working out, we get to avoid that almost entirely through two different ways. One, we're really great at adapting. So we made a mead with my friends from Moto Sonora. They're a relatively new brewery in Tucson, Arizona. And they have this really great branding, and then we hit it off, and we're like, we've got to do something. So again, talking about Belgian beers. Normally, I don't do Belgian beers as collabs. It's usually like an IPA or something. But we decided to make a triple, and that's one of my favorite styles of beer to drink, and it was one of my favorite styles to brew as a home brewer. And so these guys, as on brand, they took a 5-gallon keg of triple yeast from our collab and drove it up on a motorcycle, and that was the yeast that we used to ferment this mead that we had made. And we had never used that exact kind of ale yeast. We've used all different, we can call them mead yeast, but honestly, they're mostly different types of wine yeast for red or white wine grapes. But we have used ale yeast. We've co-fermented with both as well. And so we did our first true West Mall style triple ale yeast fermentation of a traditional mead. And we put that into 3 heavy toast, brand new American oak barrels to see what would happen. And that wasn't done like throwing spaghetti on the wall style. I mean, that was, intentional, but the thing was, in the beginning, none of us liked the meat. It was weird. It was phenolic, and we're like, honestly, we didn't know if it was gonna get good. And we're like, well, we're trying to think of what can we do, right? So we filled these barrels. About 6 months went by, and we're like, okay, it's getting better. I've got goosebumps right now. I tried them the other day. They're unbelievable. Seriously, top 2 or 3 traditional meads I've had in my life. Amazing. And so we have 3 barrels. We like one of them so much. We're gonna package that as a traditional mead, Asian heavy toast, fermented with the triple yeast. And then we're gonna do this blackberry version of the other 2 barrels. Ooh. Because we bench trialed, right? All of these different fruits. And we had 12 different types of fruits, different juices, and we took the traditional mead out of the barrel, and we did little bits of blending, and we're measuring everything with the milliliters. And there were some close seconds, but the blackberry just nailed it. It was, it was
fantastic.
Organic. Oh yeah, and it
I love blackberry.
So we're gonna do this blackberry mead out of it. So that kind of explains, right, the 2 ways, right? So the one way is waiting, being patient, and hopefully it's going to get better. And that was, kind of how homebrewers made mead when I started. You'd make a mead, you didn't manage the fermentation because you didn't know how, and didn't know that was a thing. That's something we can talk. It's a huge difference between what we do and other types of alcohol. But you would just wait, and everyone was like, oh yeah, in a year it's going to be good. It was probably true, because if you don't have a happy, healthy fermentation, you're going to create all flavors, all aromas in the process. And if you're lucky, you cross your fingers and it goes away, and you have something you really dig 6, 12 months or longer down the road. But the real way that you do crazy new things is through bench trialing. So you take a small amount of something that you made, and then you trial it. We literally have a lab bench, and you've got eyedroppers and measurables, and you try all these different things, and you think, okay, what works best? And that's what we did in the case of this this triple fermented mead. And we found out that blackberry it killed it, but it turned out to be so good. So it was time on one hand, fixed our issue, and became amazing with the barrel character as well. And then bench trialing allowed us to determine the best, fruit to add in post barrel with this.
No, that's smart. No, that's very smart, very scientific in the way you're going about that. But now, for the pre-bench trials, who comes up with all this inspiration for 400 different products? Is it just your mind and your?
Absolutely not. I still come up with a lot of ideas, but anyone that works for us, certainly in production, they're making stuff that, like, we have our Tuesday today. It's our big sales and production meeting day. Mm-hmm. So this afternoon, there are going to be things that show up in these sample jars I've never even heard of. I mean, it just happens every week. So our team is constantly innovating, evolving, trying new things at this small bench trial level, and bringing me examples to try and approve or say, oh, let's add this or add that, or a little more of this, or this needs more sweetness or whatnot. So we do that on an individual basis. We do it just with our imagination, and then we put it in play. But anyone that works for Superstition that wants to take the time to go out to production, if they don't work there, can make something at the bench trial level, test batch level. And we have had several things that I've never even conceived of become really popular products because of our staff. And again, that goes back to having great people. And that is a culture that we have developed. And I thought when I started a company, well, I didn't have the awareness and that kind of 30,000 foot level of strategy I have today. Back 10 years ago, I couldn't have, right? I always wanted to create more than just really great mead. I wanted to create a great company. I wanted to create a great corporate culture where people feel inspired and valued. And I think that that's one of the ways that you do that in a concrete way is you tell people, go ahead and come up with an idea and let's test it. Let's test it together. And try not to get your feelings hurt if we don't use the name or the thing, or because I have lots of dumb ideas too that don't make it off to the shelf, right?
And that's how you create a culture of creativity. Yeah. So I think that a lot of the success, I mean, hearing that, it kind of mirrors some of the things you hear in the biggest companies like 3M, always open to the internal inventions, or Google, spend 30% of your time on your own little projects to bring in that creativity. Sounds like you're doing that. And that's something you don't see too often in wineries. It's always just the house style, or it's the winemaker's vision, and everyone else is kind of there to support that. I love this. I
fantasize about like the Trappist, brewery model where you make 3 beers, or you make one thing. Like, oh my God, my life would be so much easier. But I'm glad those guys do that. I love those products, but that's just not in my DNA. And I couldn't imagine that's very. I mean, I guess they get creative spiritually or something. But like when it comes to making products, it's
that real Zen Buddhist just kind of doing one thing. I'm going to be the best floor sweeper ever. So they just do one thing. I
love that, but that's not me. I've always been half-assed at a lot of things, and I'm okay with that.
There's greatness in there. Talking about all these SKUs. So you opened up a couple years ago, right at the heart of COVID. You decided to open up the world's first meadery wine food pairing.
So yeah, we were really on a roll in 2019. My wife and I were named the National Small Business Persons of the Year by the SBA out of 30 million.
Congrats.
We went to DC. We won Arizona, and we had 49 of the most amazing businesses, all from all different categories that were sort of competing to be named who's the best in the country, and we won that. We're on this just crazy trajectory, and we had already planned at the time to open a second retail location and to test the concept of running something remotely, because it's 100 miles away, and I drive there and back once a week at least, but it's still remote. We were going to have to build a system that operated without us being there every day with really great people, and we did that. But yeah, one of the, I think, definitions of mental illness today is opening a restaurant that's the first of its kind in an up and coming area during a pandemic. Yeah. So we did that in 2020, and it's been challenging for sure. We're going through the same challenges when it comes to not as much staffing these days. We have some great people. That was a challenge for a while, but our core folks that are with us today, many of them were there since day one, 2 years ago. But the supply chain issues, the fluctuating prices, the cost. I mean, I'm going to skip any sort of, personal or political commentary, but let's just say the price of gas we all know is really high. And that makes every single thing that is produced or consumed in this country cost so much more than it ever has.
I just paid $23 for a hamburger at a place that I used to pay about 10. So yeah, it's gone over. It's gone up everywhere.
Absolutely ridiculous.
So we're all,
and nothing's being really done about it. But anyways, we're adapting and evolving as best
all
as
we can do.
And we're, what we can do, and I say this almost weekly as a reminder to my staff. What we can do is we can make the best products in the world, and we do that every day. We can offer the best service in our restaurants, and our reviews reflect that every day. A year after we opened Phoenix, Superstition Downtown, one of the main foodie publications, Phoenix Magazine, named us one of the best new restaurants of the year in 2021. So we're doing everything within our power to provide the best service, the best products, and we're doing that in the best environment. The design down there, that what we came up with is amazing. Design on a dime, but you would never know it. I mean, the steel and the wood and the noble building materials that made both our tasting room in Prescott and what we did in Phoenix is incredible. So our food is second to none. And I am a foodie. I've been to 3-star Michelin places in Asia and Europe, and it's not that, but there are things we make that I enjoy as much or more than anything I've had anywhere else.
I got to say, those bao buns must be awesome with mead.
It's our best selling thing every single week is our pork belly bao bun. And the only reason that's on our menu is because I was doing a Meet the Mead Maker event at McKellar Taipei in Taiwan. And I showed up early because, trying to have a good impression, right? I wanted to have a beer and warm up and, get ready to talk to a bunch of new folks. And I said, do you guys have any food here? And they're like, yeah, we got bao buns. And I was like, I think I know what that is. And so this pork belly bao bun came, or two of them, right? And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, if I ever have a restaurant, I'm going to have this. And that's how we made the menu. From years of traveling around and going to different countries, my wife and I would take notes and we'd say, hey, if we ever have a restaurant, we're going to put this on the menu. And so our menu today is very international, right? So, but also our building happened to be the first Chinese market in Arizona. It was built in 1928. So we have some homage to the past when it comes to some of the Asian food, and also our chef Adolfo. He's Hispanic and of course can cook the hell out of that. But he's worked in a lot of Asian restaurants. So we do a pop-up sushi menu on Friday and Saturdays, and so we have food inspired from our travels from all over the world that makes the menu.
That's fantastic. How many SKUs, or not SKUs, that's not the right word. How many different meads are available, like on a rotating basis at that?
If you were to, like at this moment in our tasting room in Prescott or in Phoenix, not counting our reserve list, you could order 50 to 60 different samples of mead or cider.
Oh, wow.
And I've only been to a couple places. I'm thinking of like the brewery in Placentia, California, a couple of wineries that have that sort of a catalog available, and it's amazing. And that's why you're going to find something you love. Now, in general, our style is still, meaning there's no bubbles like wine, 13-14%, semi-sweet, but balanced. So that would be like if you're throwing a dart at the Superstition average, that would kind of nail it. But we do session meads in cans and ciders with carbonation. Some are filtered, some are unfiltered. But the most flavorful session meads, lower ABV 6%ers that anyone's ever made. And we also do crazy multi-year barrel age projects with bottles that are very expensive because of the time and ingredients that go into them that, through competition and reviews have rivaled anything that's ever been made. And so our range is huge. We do things that are bone dry. I could go on and on that. There's 400 plus examples of different products that we've made.
Do you have ones that you're consistently doing?
Absolutely. So we have a core cider, Blueberry Spaceship Box. It's a top-rated cider in the world on Untapped and has been for years.
I looked at that one. I'm very intrigued by it.
It's cool because it looks like purple champagne. You don't have to use your imagination at all. It's like Granny Smith apple tannin, blueberry juice. It's just it's fun to drink. It goes with almost anything. And then so that's our core cider. It comes in a 750. We have 4 750 milliliter meads. We have Lagrimas de Oro. It's you would think it's sweet if you're like really a bone dry wine drinker because you're going to smell and taste honey aromatics, but it's dry. And we Asian in a bourbon barrel to, even balance that out further. But then we have our Marion mead. We do 3 different dark berries with honey, and we have our blueberry hex, and then peanut butter jelly crime rounds out our fourth core mead. And that's this called Classic that's really fun to make. And then we have 2 session meads in cans. We have Dune Bloom. It's a prickly pear mead, so 6% ABV, carbonated. It's just delicious. And Bee Mosa, which is, there's no grapes in it, and it tastes exactly like you mix champagne and orange juice 50-50. So we're using orange juice and honey exclusively to make mimosa, and it's like a mimosa in a can.
Oh, that sounds great. Now, was moving into the cans a recent endeavor?
About 2 years ago, and I was one of those people that, if you told me 10 years ago when I started, you're going to be canning mead one day, I would have like laughed the mead right out of my nose. I'm like, I'm never putting my mead in a can, Like, you have to adapt to market forces, right? And so I'm not going to put a liquid nitrogen, super limited peach frozen, specially sourced Masamoto Family Farms fruit like in a can.
That looks fantastic. What does that sell for?
So this is about $36 for this 375. But our
cool.
cans are $5 to $6 on the shelf. And so we went from exclusively using Arizona honey, and we still use Arizona honey in all of our bottled meads, but we started sourcing international honey that cost us a little less. It was still amazing, like wildflower honey from Brazil and stuff, like fantastic honey. But we had to find a way to compete with, in my mind, a double IPA. So we have a 16-ounce can of mead on the shelf for $5 to $6 retail.
That's a great price point.
So we have a daily drinker, and we did this one time with a 12-ounce slim for a barrel aged mead. I just said I wouldn't do that, but we tried because it was barrel aged and cool, and we want to try something new. But next year, I think we're going to come out with. I haven't even made the labels yet. I'm like currently in this, like, I need to go off on a vision quest and figure out what these labels are going to look like. But I want to have 12-ounce cans of mead, because that could bring our 4-pack price down to probably like $17.99 for a 4-pack. And so now we're really getting into that daily drinker, especially.
Yeah, I would think that would be a great gateway, because in the refrigerated section, I'm anticipating it's going to be next to the seltzers and the ciders, and people are going to grab it, and they're just going to there's a little mental assuming that they're going to like it, versus having it over in the bottle section by the wine looks a little more exotic. Like they might grab the mead before they even realize it's a mead in the can, and then suddenly open their eyes to it.
So yeah, and to put it in perspective, last year, about half of what we made was our blueberry spaceship box cider. That's our best-selling product for sure. That is in a 750, and we put it in kegs as well. We have tap handles all over. But about 20% of what we did was the really high-end, what some people call wine-style meads, super premium stuff. And about 30% was our cans, and the cans are growing. So I have a feeling that while we're always, as we grow, we're going to grow our barrel program. We're always going to be making more of these ultra premium meads, because that's kind of where our passion lies. That's where our reputation lies. But the more cans we sell, the more cider we sell, the more barrels we can have, right?
Yeah.
So even if the percentage of that pie chart becomes down to 10 or 5% one day of these really high end meads in the cans take up, that's fine. And like you said, it's a great introduction, because not everyone's going to spend that or can spend that for something. I mean, special occasion, or you're just really into trying something that's the best example of its kind in the world. Go for the bottles, But if you want to be able to crack something delicious and enjoy it every day, then we make that too.
That's great. So Jeff, as we're kind of wrapping down here, I usually ask how you stay motivated, but I kind of figure out it's the creativity and just getting a new thing constantly. But I'm going to ask it. How do you stay motivated, and where do you see the future of mead growing?
I think like my whole life, growing up playing sports and my dad coaching and stuff, it was always like, you never quit, and that was kind of like a general mantra. I think that, I don't know, maybe it's, sort of tight, but that's not part of me. That's not in my head at all. And then you combine that sort of drive with inspiration and great staff, and that's what keeps me motivated. I think all of the successes that we've had, whether it's winning a medal at the Mazer Cup or that business award, or really just seeing our staff come up with a concept and running with a program that they've developed and managed, like that's awesome. That's what keeps me going, is seeing all of these aspects of project management, like we kind of started off the first couple of lines of this interview talking about. I love seeing things being built and seeing goals being met. So that's what keeps me motivated. And as far as the future of mead goes, I I say this all the time, and no one knows if it's true, but there's going to be a day where you go into a craft beer bar and they've got a mead on tap at every single craft beer bar in the world. And then there's going to be 2 meads on tap, and bottles and cans. And that's starting to happen. I think that there are some major indicators that will define the mead industry. No meadery has ever grown and sold like you see in the wine world, like you see in the beer world. One day that's going to happen to one of us. That's going to be a major indicator that mead has arrived. But honestly, I think the biggest factor that's going to define the future of mead and its potential is a really big company, whether it's buying a meadery and scaling it or doing it themselves, taking advantage of an existing national or international distribution system to take mead and it's not going to be a $30 bottle. It's not going to be a $100 bottle. It's going to be a $5 or $6 can or less. And someone's going to take that and they're going to get it into every grocery store chain and every convenience store. And that's when mead's going to arrive. That hasn't happened. It may never. No one can speculate that it will, but I kind of believe it will.
I think the odds are in your favor on that. I think logically, it seems like it would. It's logically. So Jeff, where can people find out more about you and Superstition Meadery?
So go to our website, superstitionmeadery.com. We have 4 different Instagram accounts. Superstition Meadery, just at Superstition Meadery is our main account. But through that, you can find our production facility and see behind the scenes stuff there. You can see amazing mead and food pairing stuff from Superstition Downtown or our Prescott tasting room. So I think the best way to connect with us is to go to our website, go to our social media. We update social media daily. There's stories and reels and all. You can see what the latest stuff is. If you really want to be part of Superstition, on our website, you can join our Mead Club, which is a subscription-based program, just like any wine club. That's a great way, monthly or quarterly, to have new things sent to you and to get access to some really cool early releases. Our guild is full now, but usually December 1st of every year, we open up our guild membership. We throw a huge guild party every year. Wow. That's a really cool way to be a part of Superstition, to get products no one else can get, and to really be part of the core fan base if you're really into it. But go to our website, go to social, see what we're doing, follow us, and we have a web store. We can ship to 40 states in DC. So, 80% of the country by state math, think about population math, it's probably 95% of the country, right? Yeah. So go try some Superstition mead from our web store. Yeah. There are 40 or 50 things some days on there. And we have if you find something you really like, order a couple bottles because it might be a one-off, or just ask us, shoot us an email, info@superstitionmeadery.com. We pride ourselves on customer service constantly. So we're always here for people that have any questions about what to order or what's going on.
Sounds great. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Cool. It's great speaking with you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.